The Brooks Glycerin 23 and the GTS 23 sound very similar. They don't look that different either. However, there's 5 key differences between them that you need to know before you decide which one to pick up. So first of all, let's look at what's underneath the shoe. So we've 39 mils of cushioning in the rear foot and 31 in the forefoot of the GTS, giving you an 8 mil difference in height from the back to the front. So a slightly higher end of the drop, however it's lower than what we saw in the GTS 22. Similar can be said for the Glycerin 23, which has an 8 mil drop as well, but it has 38 mils in the rear foot, 30 in the forefoot, so just 1 mil difference in stack. However, the cushioning and fit feel very different underneath your feet. Part of that's got to do with the weight, so we've got a lighter shoe in the Glycerin 23. It comes in at 351 grams versus 364 grams in a size 12 US, which is my size. Now they both have the DNA tuned nitrogen infused cushioning, but they really feel very different. So there's a big overhaul in the Glycerin 23. They said it was the same as the 22, but it just feels completely different, which usually means there's a different blend within the same type of cushioning. It is much more plush, much more premium feel when you step into it. So you get that exceptional step-in comfort, but also when you walk and run in it, you get that really premium feel, and we'll touch on performance in a moment. But in contrast to that, with the GTS 23, it feels a lot firmer, a lot more supportive, and a lot more structured than what we get in the Glycerin 23. And there's a big reason for that. The first being that you've got a GuideRail system built into the shoe. So they're rails that run either side of the shoe, a little bit at the heel and then all the way up towards your big toe. Think of it as like rails in a bowling alley, trying to support your foot, keeping it centered in the shoe as you move. So it's a more modern form of stability. However, there are other features built into it as well. You've got quite a broad base underneath your foot. You've got some sole flare, which is where the sole comes out wider than where your foot sits in the shoe. Both of these factors increase the amount of contact that your foot has with the ground, inherently making the shoe more stable. Then it has an extremely rigid heel counter, which is just this aspect around the back of your heel. The function of this is to try and control pronation moments when you initiate contact with the ground, so your foot doesn't fall excessively inward, or if you're someone who needs that extra support, it really keeps you centered in the shoe as you move. Now it is a lot more structured and a lot more rigid than what we saw in the GTS 22, and we'll touch on if that's good or bad later on. But just in terms of the fit of the shoes, they are very similar. So you get a similar sized toe box, both of them have a premium plush upper, similar sized tongues and similar amount of padding around that heel cup with a nice pull-on tab. So there's a really premium feel when you slip into the shoe. They both come in a wide version and a narrow version for those of you who need those differences. So how does it feel underneath your foot? Well, it's very contrasting. When you walk in the GTS 23, you get a firm, rigid, stable feeling. For some people, it might feel even a little bit too stable because it really tries to fix your ankle in the center of the shoe rather than trying to control it or influence how it moves. So it's a little bit too far, in my opinion, compared to what we saw in the GTS 22, whereas the Glycerin 23 is a massive upgrade on the Glycerin 22. It feels much more premium when you're walking and standing in it, extremely comfortable. The slightly lower drop will probably work for more of the population, although those of you who've always worn the Glycerin series might be a little bit disappointed. However, it's just that really standard casual fitting shoe that just gives you a really premium feel underfoot, even though it's quite an understated looking shoe. When it comes to running, they're also very different. You get quite a hard, firm feel when you initiate contact with the ground, especially if you're a heel striker in the GTS 23. You really feel locked into the shoe and there's not a huge amount of bounce to it. So it's a little bit of a flat feeling in terms of a shoe. You can use it for easy mileage. You can use it for those recovery miles if you want. The Glycerin 23, it actually has a bit more bounce, a bit more spring to it than what we saw in the Glycerin 22. So it's a bit more fun to run in. You could use it for easy miles if you're just starting off 0 to 5k runs, up to 10k, 15k, not a problem. You could probably even use it up to marathon distance if you just wanted kind of a standard reliable shoe. Now some of the issues that I have with the GTS 23 is it's just too rigid around the ankle. So even those of you who like to get some pronation control, who need a more supportive shoe, so you might find that this is just overly stable compared to the GTS 23. Now it can work really well if you're someone who has issues with the posterior tibial tendon or you need to offload the arch of your foot, because it does a really good job at that. It just doesn't fit in with the modern stability shoe that we're seeing more and more brands bring out. The Glycerin 23 on the other hand is your hands down best shoe for walking and standing all day, very versatile for running. So really they're just two contrasting shoes that have moved even further apart with these latest series. However, let me know your thoughts on them in the comment section below. There's links to them in the description if you want to check out the latest prices, and if you watch us regularly or you're new to the channel but you haven't subscribed, please do, as it makes a significant difference to the channel, and otherwise thank you very much for watching.